The galaxy remembers Earth the way a wound remembers a knife that made it. Across the silver lanes of the void, their name is still spoken with restraint, not hatred. Fear's older, quieter sibling. 2 centuries have passed since any transmission left that blue world, but in the high councils of civilized space, Deathworld is still an argument ender. Mention humanity, and the most stubborn admiral will fall silent. Commander Xylan of the Velthari Alliance was born long after the last Terran ship vanished, yet he could recite every rumor. That Earth burned itself clean, that the survivors turned into machines, that they hid behind a shield of storms and listened. He believed none of it, until the day the plague arrived. The silencer began at the edge of known space, a shimmer in the biosphere of a mining moon, dismissed as contamination. Within 1 rotation, the miners were gone. Within 2, the orbital stations were silent. Within 3, the infection had learned to cross-vacuum through spore-carrying drones. It did not just kill, it erased. Whole archives went blank. Planetary memories collapsed. It was as if a thought had learned to feed. The Alliance convened emergency session after emergency session. Each ended the same way, with the realization that their sciences, refined through 10,000 peaceful years, had no weapon for hunger that intelligent. The term silencer was first whispered by a communications officer who noticed that the plague's pattern resembled signal interference. The name spread faster than the truth. When the 5th world fell, Xylan stood before the Council of Suns, voice trembling through the crystalline chamber. "We are facing extinction," he said. "If there is power left in the galaxy to stop this, we must seek it." The chamber erupted in protest. The words Deathworld and Earth were hurled back at him like curses. "You would invite annihilation to save us?" The High Speaker asked. Xylan's answer was a simple one. "If death can be bargained with, I will bargain." He returned to his flagship, the Orlease, carrying authorization to coordinate defense, not to contact the Forbidden World. But as the next system dimmed into radio silence, authorization lost meaning. The Velthari were archivists at heart. Their greatness lay in preserving stories. Yet what good were stories if no one remained to read them? On the 47th night of crisis, Xylan entered the ship's comm core alone. The chamber was hollow and blue, alive with the pulse of quantum relays. He hesitated only once before speaking to the void. "Unknown Terran frequencies. This is Commander Xylan of the Velthari Alliance. Our worlds are dying. We request aid." He transmitted the coordinates and the spectral data of the plague, encrypting nothing. To call Earth was to commit political suicide, but the dead had no need for politics. The message left the Orlease at light speed, then vanished into subspace, threading ancient Terran relays that had slept for centuries. Hours passed, then a day, then 2. No reply. The ship continued evacuation protocols. On the 3rd day, the Oralis's navigation array flickered. A tone rippled through every deck. 3 pulses, low and metallic. The bridge AI froze mid-sentence. A string of archaic Terran code appeared across the main display. Crew whispered, afraid to breathe. The translation module hesitated, then rendered the words into common speech. Transmission received. Stand by. No origin tag. No signature. Just that. For a long moment, the crew simply listened to the hum of their reactors, each aware that something vast had heard them. Systems glitched, environmental readouts inverted. Sensor ghosts appeared near the dark side of the nearest moon. Power surged, subsided, then stabilized at slightly different frequencies. Xylan ordered all scanners to record, though he knew they would not understand what they found. The ancient relay network, long thought derelict, had awakened. Across multiple sectors, dormant satellites began to turn, aligning toward the same coordinates. So, in the following days, rumors spread through the fleet. Some claimed to hear whispers in the comm channels, voices reciting old Earth languages. Others said the plague itself paused in its expansion, as if listening too. Xylan logged every anomaly with methodical calm, but inside he felt the same pressure as every officer, a sensation of being watched by something not malevolent, merely inevitable. 48 standard hours after the message, space bent. Sensors screamed. A distortion well larger than any known jump signature tore open beside the system's gas giant. From its core unfolded a ship that should not have existed. Angular, scarred, layered like geological strata. Its hull radiated heat signatures inconsistent with fusion or antimatter. It was powered by something the sensors couldn't name. The Orioles went a red alert. Weapons remained cold. None would matter. A voice entered every channel simultaneously. Clear, steady, unmistakably human. "This is Captain Mara Holt, Terran Vanguard Command. Identify who authorized this contact." Xylan spoke, the translator trembling in modulation. I am Commander Xylan. We sent a distress call. A biological construct known as a silencer is consuming our worlds." There was a pause long enough for dread to grow roots. Then the voice again. "Acknowledged. Prepare for quarantine. Do not transmit further signals beyond your system." The line cut. Moments later, the Terran vessel, its nameplate reading Erebus Vanguard, deployed swarms of drones that shimmered like dust motes. They moved with impossible precision, mapping every satellite, every orbital trajectory, even the trajectories of dust fragments. Within minutes, they knew more about the Velthari home system than the Velthari themselves. On the Orioles, officers crowded the observation bay. Through polarized glass, they watched the drones form geometric patterns around the sun, creating a lattice that pulsed with invisible energy. The entire system hummed. Static bled into comms. Biological sensors registered temporary arrhythmias in crew members. "Are they attacking?" someone asked. Xylan could only whisper, "They're measuring." The Terran ship released smaller craft, sleek, dark, each carrying a single figure encased in adaptive armor. The humans themselves. Their arrival on the Velthari capital was conducted with procedural efficiency. No ceremony, no warning. They stepped out onto the landing field, as if gravity and protocol were beneath notice. Their suits exhaled thin veils of mist. Their movements were controlled, deliberate, almost gentle. The first to remove her helmet was Captain Holt. Her face was ordinary, almost disappointingly so. Short hair, sun-brown skin, eyes that didn't blink often enough. What unsettled the observers wasn't her expression, but the stillness behind it. She regarded the delegation. "Show us the infected zones." The scientists obeyed. No negotiation, no demands. Within hours, Terran analysis teams occupied the research rings orbiting the stricken planet. They spoke in clip reports, referencing protocols unknown to any database. They worked with the quiet speed of entities who had already solved the puzzle once before. Within a day, their conclusion was transmitted. The silencer was not alien. It was built from Terran genetic templates, weaponized adaptive nanobiota, once designed to terraform hostile worlds. A creation that had escaped extinction just as its creators had. When Xylan received the report, he felt the entire council's outrage explode. When the Terrans returned, they did not bring armies. They brought procedures. For every world infected by the silencer, they drafted a plan: isolate, sterilize, rebuild. Their fleets did not occupy space. They dissected it. Every orbital trajectory was recalculated. Every communication relay reprogrammed to carry only compressed data through human-approved filters. The rest was silence. To the Velthari, it looked like conquest by mathematics. No parades, no threats, only perfect control. The Terrans operated with a precision that suggested they had rehearsed this extinction before. In a sense, they had. Earth itself was their prototype, the original death world where life had learned to survive by evolving teeth. Captain Mara Holt transmitted her orders through unadorned text. Containment Priority 1. Human protocols apply. No elaboration. Every ship, every drone, every biological asset obeyed. Their coordination defied comprehension. No visible chain of command, no debate. To the Alliance, which valued consensus and debate, such efficiency was indistinguishable from tyranny. Yet it worked. Within weeks, the silencer's expansion curve flattened. Wherever the Terrans arrived, chaos became order. The infected planets, though sterilized, were mapped in detail down to each surviving molecule. The data they gathered was shared only partially, and even that partial fragment reshaped alien science. Whole civilizations saw the limit to their own understanding reflected in those sterile fields. Xylan observed in silence, documenting. What disturbed him was not the destruction, but the absence of emotion accompanying it. The humans treated planetary sterilization like a medical procedure, precise, regretless, necessary. He wondered if mercy had been bred out of them, or if it had simply evolved into something colder. Then came the recordings. Terran archives were vast, older than most known empires. They opened portions of their history to explain their reasoning. Through holographic translation, the Council watched images of Earth's past. The wars, the plagues, the collapses, the endless rebuilding. They saw continents scorched and regrown, oceans poisoned and purified. Humanity's survival looked less like triumph and more like endurance beyond sanity. When the reels ended, the chamber remained quiet. Even those who had called the Terrans monsters now understood that monsters were merely those who had adapted first. Xylan's report phrased it simply. They survived the impossible long enough to forget it was impossible. But beneath the admiration, fear remained. The Terrans did not disclose the source of their sudden reappearance. No envoy from Earth attended council sessions. Only their captain spoke, and only when necessary. Every request for cooperation was answered with clinical brevity. Every act of gratitude met a polite nod, and nothing more. When Xylan approached Captain Holt for an interview, she accepted without expression. They met in a decontamination chamber orbiting the first cleansed world, both wearing sterilized suits. He asked a question every historian would have asked. Why return now? Her visor tilted fractionally toward him. Because you called. He pressed further, asking if they had waited for such a call. She did not answer directly. When you live on a world that kills by default, she said, you learn to hear certain frequencies. Desperation has one of the clearest signals in the universe. That was all. The Terrans continued their operations with unrelenting precision. They used drones shaped like metallic insects to descend into infected atmospheres, scattering nanoclouds that digested the silencer's spores into inert dust. To outside observers, it looked as though the air itself was burning in silence. Within the surviving colonies, alien populations watched the process with reverence and dread. The humans provided food, shelter, and decontamination units. They treated civilians not as equals nor as inferiors, but as potential vectors. Even their compassion was measured. A child offered a flower to a human officer. The officer accepted it, scanned it for contaminants, and incinerated it gently in the same motion. Rumors spread quickly. Some said the humans had transcended emotion. Others whispered they felt too much, and that their coldness was a kind of armor. Xylan suspected the latter. Whenever he glimpsed their eyes through visors, he saw a calculation, yes, but behind that, fatigue. The kind that comes from remembering every catastrophe rather than forgetting any. Weeks passed. The Silencer retreated system by system. Alliance fleets followed the Terran vanguard, cleaning up in their wake, imitating their methods as best they could. For the first time in months, survival seemed possible. Yet the relief was short-lived. During one debriefing, Terran analysts released a statement that sent shock to the Council. The Silencer was not self-originating. It carried embedded command structures, signatures of deliberate design. Someone, somewhere, had rebuilt it. Xylan attended the private briefing aboard the Erebus Vanguard. The Terrans displayed molecular schematics across the chamber. These command nodes, Holt explained, use coding identical to the Veltheri bioweapon archive of Cycle 7284. The implication was immediate. The Veltheri themselves, his own species, had once engineered this plague, back when humanity was still exiled beyond the quarantine line. The Council had always denied such rumors. Now the proof rotated before them in perfect crystalline clarity. What we built was containment, Xylan murmured, horrified. Holt's tone did not change. What you built was extermination. Containment was a myth you told yourselves. She deactivated projection and walked to the viewport. We lost billions to the silence once. You weaponized our failure. You repeated our mistake. Her calm was worse than anger. It implied disappointment rather than rage. Word spread despite Terran attempts at discretion. Across the galaxy, trust in the Alliance fractured. Civilizations that had once relied on Velthari's science now viewed them as architects of genocide. Riots erupted on trade stations. Ships defected. Old rivalries reignited under the heat of guilt and fear. Through it all, the humans continued their methodical work. They did not exploit the chaos. They simply moved forward as though morality was a luxury for those who could afford delay. Xylan observed Captain Holt one final time that cycle, as she prepared her fleet for deeper investigation into the plague's source network. He asked what she intended to do once they found the origin. Her reply was quiet. "We'll erase it. Entirely. Even if it means destroying more worlds." Her gaze did not waver. "Especially if it does." There was no threat in her tone, no satisfaction. Just the steady gravity of a species that had learned the price of mercy too many times. The following weeks saw the Terrans extend their control across multiple sectors. They established containment perimeters with machine-like precision. When an infected system refused to submit to quarantine protocols, their fleet neutralized it in under an hour. Not invasion, excision. The spectacle reached the rest of the galaxy through intercepted transmissions. The images were haunting. Human vessels gliding through orbital debris, deploying drones that dissolved entire defense platforms with microscopic particles. The death count was minimal, the efficiency absolute. For every destroyed ship, they broadcast a single line of justification.